Recently, I've taken it upon myself to rank up as Wraith without spending blood points and without using perks, from rank 20 to rank 1. The point here is to help show you that skill and strategy is often more important than perk loadout in at least the first 10 ranks, which is as far as I've made it. And while doing this, I decided to make a video series that walks you through what I think you should learn at each and every rank to slowly build your mental acuity and skill sets. So here we are on youtube.com/DyllonKG. Welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to cover how to grow from rank 15 to rank 11. This is part 2 in a 4-part video series, so if you missed part 1, consider giving that a look here. Now, in today's particular video, we will outline at rank 15, hitting multiple people. At rank 14, safe versus unsafe pallets, and your first jukes, if you will. At rank 13, slugging and when to slug. Rank 12, when to kick gens and break pallets. And rank 11, inferring and assuming survivor location. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right in and get you guys started. Now, at rank 15, I think it is best to start focusing on hitting multiple people before committing to one chase. In the first video, we taught you how to track survivors and start chasing individuals. But what happens when you roll across 2 or 3 survivors on the same generator? Now, in my opinion, it is really important that you wound as many people as you reasonably can before you commit to one particular chase. As a killer, wounding multiple people does a lot for you. Survivors' primary objectives are to work on gens, but if they're wounded, many of them will attempt healing before they get back on a generator, at least in these earlier ranks. This is what I consider to be a form of game slowdown. A survivor that is wounded will spend anywhere from 8 to 32 seconds, maybe more, healing. And that is precious time that you're buying yourself from a generator being worked on or done. And in this way, you're slowing the game down in your favor and gaining a lot more points while doing so. If survivors don't get the opportunity or choose not to heal before the next time you meet them, then, well, you have a much easier chase on your hands down the road. So either way, this is a win-win for the killer. Now, if you only find one survivor at the beginning of your game, and you have no idea where anybody else is, obviously in this scenario, don't just wound them and let them go to hopefully go find somebody else. In this case, chase that one person. However, if you find one survivor and you wound them, and you end up chasing them to where a group of people are, break away from the one survivor, wound multiples, at least one other. This is something that you should start doing specifically if you're chasing somebody and you hear that people are on a generator next to you. Break away from the chase, go get those people. The added benefit here is often survivors, while running from you, will run towards a generator or near a generator where people are working, especially at the beginning of the game. If you break away from your one wounded survivor to get the others, you're also effectively moving them off of a generator they would have otherwise completed. And again, this also counts as slowing the match down, interrupting the survivors and exerting pressure over that area where they invested so much time and preventing gen completion. The thing you don't want to do here is focus so much on hitting other people that you never commit to a chase. You do have to down people and hook them and things of that nature, so please keep that in mind. Try to find that balance, if you can, between injuring and actually committing and downing people. If you hit one person and then let them go to go wound a second person, potentially stay on that second person. If you wound 2 people and there is still a third person who is very close by and vulnerable, wound and then stay on the third person. All right, so at rank 15, we're going to really practice wounding multiple survivors intentionally and splitting that pressure, right? And knowing that we're slowing people down, all right? If that opportunity obviously arises. If you're chasing someone and you hear or see survivors near a generator that is close enough by, move to push them off, wound them, further slow down the match in your favor, and pursue a new target for that first hook. Doing this will give you added slowdown. If you feel like generators are being completed too quickly at the beginning of your match, focus on tracking people and getting people off of gens as fast as you can, this may be something for you to work on. We're going to move into rank 14, of course, if you feel like you got a handle on 15. And we're going to dabble a bit with your first killer juke, the Unsafe Pallet juke. Now, to do this effectively, we first have to identify what a safe pallet is versus what an unsafe pallet is. As we mentioned in the last video, survivors may start dropping pallets and waiting around afterwards to see what you do. These survivors are generally unbothered and unafraid and may in fact use a down pallet against you. But in many cases, there are unsafe pallets. What this means is that once the pallet is dropped, the killer can still navigate around to the other side of the pallet extremely quickly, causing the pallet to be unsafe for the survivor unless they get a stun on the killer, alright? Safe pallets are pallets that you would find at the shack, certain jungle gyms, pallet gyms, or other areas where debris makes it so much more time consuming to get to the other side, where the survivor can run you in circles for a minute or 2 minutes without much of an issue. Now, as you play, it is important to start learning and identifying what is a safe pallet and what is unsafe. Can you go around the pallet in less than a second or two? If you can, it's probably unsafe. And if it is unsafe, we're going to teach you the unsafe pallet juke. Usually, after survivors drop an unsafe pallet and they do not stun you, the killer, can rotate to the left or to the right side of said pallet, depending on which side is shorter or smaller. The idea here is to fake or scare the survivor into doubling back and sliding across the pallet. By moving slightly towards the side of the pallet the survivor's on, they will generally panic and slide back where they came from. Be careful not to fully round the corner or get too close to the survivor. Just take a few steps in the direction. Make them think you're coming around the other side to get to them. And anticipate quickly moving back. Look for telltale signs that the survivor is going to slide back across the pallet. If and when the survivor slides across, walk backwards or quickly turn around to catch them on the other side. Depending on your distance, it is completely okay to bait the survivor into sliding back and forth several times in a row so that you may catch them better off guard. In fact, in my opinion, the more that the survivor slides, usually the more stressed they become and the more mistakes they make. It will take time to master this and get this down to an art form, but remember to truly observe the survivor here. Don't just assume your tactic will work first time. Observe them and react to them. Be sure to keep in mind that you still want to be able to reach the other side easily when pressuring them. And of course, just practice, all right? It's going to take time to learn when to swing, the distance of your swing, and if you're going to be able to actually land the hit, okay? Please note that you could sometimes get away with the tactic at some safe pallets, but this will generally cause you to waste a tremendous amount of time at those safe pallets. This tactic is only meant for the unsafe pallets that you can quickly get around as a killer, very quickly, all right? If the pallet is safe and a survivor is waiting for you to make a move, your best move is still to almost always break that pallet, all right? So at rank 14, we're going to be trying your best to keep track of what pallets are safe and unsafe and practice juking back and forth to bait the survivor into giving you that free hit. Now at rank 13, we're going to teach you one of the most important tools of the game, slugging. Earlier in this video, we mentioned hitting multiple survivors to wound them, and slugging is a huge reason why. Slugging is when you down a survivor, but you don't immediately pick them up. They're forced to lay there or crawl around, leaving a bloody trail, visually similar to, well, a slug. Slugging is something that, in my experience at high ranks, you sort of have to do to split pressure. And slugging is a way that I play around being a tunneler as well, which, if you don't know what tunneling is, we discussed that bit in a video right here. Slugging is a powerful tool to slow down a match. If you down a survivor and you know another survivor is nearby, close by, real close by, you can leave the down survivor to slug on the ground. This usually means teammates have to come and help their teammate up off the ground while you chase the second target. And this pulls them off of generators, slowing down any progress that they would have normally gotten done. And it pulls those teammates closer to you as well. Now, if you manage to quickly down your second target after slugging the first one, generally you should try to slug your second target and go back to pick up the first. That is because your first slug has probably recovered a large majority of their health and is at a large risk of getting healed, so slug the second target, go back to the first for the hook. It's really important to know here that if you do slug the first person and you choose to chase the second person, it is completely okay that the first person gets healed by their teammates. Remember that they are still not on a generator if they're being healed by somebody else. As long as you're not overcommitting to that second chase, taking 1 or 2 minutes to get that chase done, it's okay, because slugging is slowing down the match in your benefit. So don't panic if the first person you slug and left on the ground gets healed while you're chasing the second. That is fine. Just down that second person, go ahead and put them on a hook. And in going back to that first person, you could even find another person to hit and wound, healing them there. Now, you may be used to downing someone, hooking them immediately, and just moving on with your day, but at minimum, I will down someone, slug them, break some of the pallets they potentially threw, kick the gen they were working on, take a peek to see if any nosy survivors are in the area before hooking. Even a slight slug like this is very helpful, giving you a little bit of time to get other things done so you can hook and be on your way. Now, the way I would never recommend slugging is by downing a person and never picking them up the entire match. That sucks. The bleed out timer on somebody who is freshly slugged is 4 minutes. It takes them 4 minutes to bleed out on the ground. And if they do bleed out, you get almost no points for their death, and you get absolutely no points for hooking them. It sucks, and it's probably the meanest thing you could do to a survivor, and will probably result in a disconnect. Now, there is a disclaimer surrounding slugging. There is a bit of code of conduct here, right? When you're up against tough teams that are absolutely destroying you, you're losing gens, slugging is an important aspect of the game, right? And it helps you to recover, and it helps you to maintain control to some degree. Now, obviously, in the video clips you see here, you see me slugging because I needed to get slugging footage, so I got slugging footage. But at the end of the day, I generally don't think that you need to slug every person you come across. It is a technique to learn, and there are moments to use it. So I wanted to make that distinction. I think for the most part, when I play as killer, like to think about the other party and if they're having fun or not. And if I've slugged 3 people while I'm chasing the 4th and they're all just laying on the ground doing nothing, right, that is sort of a problem. And that's in my eyes, not okay. So learn this technique and use this technique, but use it intelligently when you need it, when you need to regain a foothold and control. This is not something to ruin other people's games with. I do not endorse that. So, at rank 13, practice slugging survivors. Remember that you wounded people earlier on in the match by splitting that pressure. Now, if you down somebody and you see somebody close enough by, leave the first person down and chase the second. Once you've downed that second, if you've downed that second person, come back to the first one, pick them up, and put them on the hook. Now at rank 12, let's go ahead and start discussing breaking pallets and kicking generators. As this video primarily focuses on speeding the game up in your favor and slowing it down against survivors, regressing gens and ensuring faster chases is pretty vital to that narrative. So first, let's discuss breaking pallets. This seems like a small thing to do, and as we covered in our last tutorial, there are lots of times where you wouldn't immediately break a pallet, like if the survivor drops it and just hightails it out of there. Sometimes you can play around the pallet really quickly to get that easy down, as we taught you earlier in this video with the unsafe pallet juke. But there comes a time to get rid of these pallets, so you do not have to worry about them. Breaking a pallet is an action that takes 2 seconds for the killer. When chasing a survivor, 2 seconds is a lot of time, so my firm suggestion is to break pallets after you've downed someone or after hooking somebody. Unless, of course, it is a safe pallet, and then break it in the moment. If I down a survivor near a pallet, I'll usually break the pallet before I pick that survivor up, so that I can hook them and just be on my merry way. Breaking pallets removes a valuable resource for survivors out of the map, especially at locations like shack or places where pallets are hard to navigate around. So be sure to do your cleanup so you don't get caught in a precarious situation later on. Now, we're going to move on to discussing kicking generators, which has a little bit more nuance to it. So when you kick a generator and have no additional perks or anything of that nature, the generator will just begin regression. Kicking the generator itself doesn't cause any percentage of instant regression, but it begins the regression process. So, If a generator is at 99% completion, the generator takes roughly 5 minutes to completely regress to 0 after a normal kick. You can tell how far along a generator is generally by how many pistons are firing on that generator. So if you hook them near a gen, it's important that you kick that generator. You have a moment to do it, right? Sometimes this gets forgotten about. You hook the survivor and you just move on. But if a generator is at 99% and you kick it and it sits for 1 minute and 15 seconds, that gen's regressed 25% of its total amount, which that's time that survivors now have to make up for. That inherently buys you time. I wouldn't necessarily stop chasing someone just to kick a generator unless you have a perk that assists with kicking generators, especially if there's multiple people around the gen, right? All a survivor has to do is click the interact button on a gen to cease that regression. They don't even have to do a skill check. So kick a generator after all survivors have been thoroughly scared away or downed for the time being. Like I said, after hooking somebody and securing that location, then kick the generator so that it regresses at least for, 20, 30 seconds, right? So for rank 12, start using your time wisely with regards to kicking gens and kicking pallets, and do these things strategically when you have a moment to breathe and do so, unless necessary. Broken pallets mean easier chases for you in the mid to late game, and regressing gens buys you more time to find and down your opponents, prolongs the game in your favor. Practice doing these things around the same time you down a survivor, before hooking them if you can, or after hooking them if you prefer that. But this is a good time for you to do some territorial cleanup. Keep that in mind as you move forward. Moving into rank 11, this will be a fairly important segment, so take a stretch, get some water, strap in, and get ready. We're going to be discussing inferring survivor locations, and this is something that you'll end up doing most of the time as you start ranking up, especially into higher ranks. So first thing we're going to discuss is crows. You may not have really noticed this much before or paid a lot of attention to it, but there are crows on the map in Dead by Daylight. They'll fly away if the killer is near, with the exception of a cloaked Wraith, but they will also usually fly away if a survivor is nearby. When you spawn into a map, patrol your gens, but work on panning your camera while you're moving towards a generator. Keep your head on a swivel, if you will, while you continue your directional momentum towards a gen that you plan to patrol. If you see a crow fly off in the distance while panning your camera, there's for sure a survivor in the vicinity of that crow. Looking for crows flying away will tell you where people are throughout the match, so please keep your eyes peeled. Next up, regarding inferring information, is something a little bit more robust that will take a lot of practice, but we're going to be talking about inferring location based on hook states. Now, say you hook your first target of the match, right? You hook them, you put them on the hook, you start chasing somebody else. Let's pause there and think about what that means for the game. At this point, you know one person is on the hook, and you are chasing one person. This is good. You know where half of the team is. This is huge information. So, at most, 2 people are on a generator or generators. And this is really, really good for you. You're splitting pressure and slowing the game down. Imagine if 3 people were on 3 different generators. The game goes a lot faster, but you have 2 people tied up right now, and this is a great spot to be in. Now, say your chase continues for a little bit, and the survivor that was on hook gets unhooked. Let's pause again. Let's think about this. You now know where 3 people are, and none of those 3 people are completing generator objectives. 1 person is in your sights, and 2 people were back on the hook. The person who was on the hook, and the person who did the unhooking. Now, you down the survivor you're chasing, you hook them, and you know roughly what side of the map 2 survivors could or probably are on, because, well, somebody was on the hook and they got unhooked in that area, all right? Now, in my opinion, you should go over there and generally check out where the 2 survivors are. The survivors likely took a bit to heal, which takes anywhere from 8 seconds or even longer, depending on what was going on. So swivel your head, look for scratch marks, listen for breathing, and watch for crows if those survivors are running away. That'll give you indications of where the person that was unhooked and the unhooker are running to, going, etc. If you keep this kind of momentum going for a while, you'll always know where at least half of the team is, roughly. By bouncing back and forth from hooked survivor to healthy survivors, wounding them, making sure one person is on the hook consistently, you have valuable information and are really inhibiting the team. Pay close attention to the HUD in the bottom left as well to see when the hooked survivor gets saved and when or if they heal. The time between unhook and heal will tell you if they self-cared or ran elsewhere to heal. If they're unhooked but don't heal for 35 seconds, they may have self-cared or they ran a good distance before the teammate healed them, right? Regardless, someone healing is somebody who isn't on generators, and that's the important thing to do here, is always sort of be able to infer how many people are on generators roughly, all right? Now, it is possible that survivors unhook and run far away and they don't immediately heal. Maybe your chase with your second individual took a very long time to complete. Use your best judgment here, all right? Are there gens around where the first hooked survivor was? If there are, the survivor may have unhooked and hopped immediately on a generator. Maybe they didn't heal at all. And that'll help you determine whether or not it is valuable to go back to the area after you finish your current chase, all right? If there are no objectives where the prior survivor was unhooked, then it may not be incredibly valuable to double check that area, as survivors have to move somewhere with gens eventually as it is. It'll take time to develop this kind of map sense and keep track of all of this information, but doing all of this will help you immensely, especially as you rank up more and more. So let's simplify this. For rank 11, keep a lookout for crows to indicate where survivors are. And after the game has gotten its start and you start getting momentum, keep track of where you hooked someone. When you're chasing the next person, keep track of when that person that you hooked gets unhooked. Remember that people being unhooked and healed keep survivors from objectives. And by always having a good idea of where 2 to 3 people are and or just were on the map, you'll know exactly how much pressure to apply and where, and it'll help you to keep your cool. Use this information to always have a rough bead on where survivors are on the map. This will help you make more direct confrontations happen with survivors, to pressure them more, to scramble them more, and to slow down generators in your favor. And that is it. That is our tutorial on how to get from rank 15 to rank 11 in Dead by Daylight with no perks and just learning new skills. What do you guys think, though? What do you guys struggle with doing in your games? I would love to help you out. Let us know in the comments below, and of course, we will pray to the entity to see you in the next video.